All right, hello, everybody. I would like to call this meeting to order. Clerk Allison, could we please have a roll call?
Yes. Trustee Conboy. We're waiting. I'll come back to him. Trustee Farrell Mayer.
Here.
Trustee Kennedy.
Here.
Trustee Metz.
Here.
Trustee O'Loughlin. Trustee O'Loughlin, no.
Here.
Okay. And Trustee Wittenberg
Here.
and Mayor Hinshaw. Mayor Hinshaw. Okay.
Here.
Okay, thank you. We're waiting for, I'm waiting for.
And Sean Trustee Conboy just logged into the meeting.
Okay, fine, perfect. Everyone is here. Thank you.
Sean, can you say here?
Here. Sorry, I had a little problem.
Thank you. Okay, if we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We done? Oh, okay.
Didn't hear anything, Tom.
No, we didn't hear it.
Well, we had a great Pledge of Allegiance here. Okay, I need to read a little bit. Hang with me for a moment. Can everybody hear me? Anybody not?
Hear you.
Good. Pursuant to Public Act 101-0640, as well as the disaster proclamation and executive order issued by Governor Pritzker, this meeting will be held in person with limited physical attendance. As set forth below, those not willing or able to physically attend can still fully participate. Meetings must still be in a manner that is open and convenient to the public, and there still needs to be an opportunity for public comment. There are changes from our normal meeting procedures, but we will not conduct business privately. Consideration is being given to how the public can at least see or listen to the meeting virtually without needing to attend in person. Instructions for how the public can see, listen, and/or participate in meetings are listed immediately below this statement. The public can submit comments. Importantly, the public body has adopted temporary public comment rules to ensure the means chosen to provide an opportunity for public comment complies with the Open Meeting Act provisions that any person shall be permitted an opportunity to address public officials under the rules established and recorded by the public body. This will be a completely remote meeting following the Illinois Revised Open Meeting Act guidelines. Public comments may be submitted at email via admin@indianheadpark-il.gov or via text message at 708-497-9745. This meeting is being broadcast on Zoom, and we also have it on Facebook Live and Comcast Channel 6 for Indian Head Park locations. And then, of course, this is being recorded and will be posted on the website after a few days. Okay, under the mayor's report. And if you're not talking, if you could please mute. I hear a little, but not bad. Coronavirus. The Cook County Department of Public Health has Indian Head Park with 238 confirmed cases of COVID-19. That is up from 45 from the last village board meeting. The confirmed cases continue to explode with an increase of 23% in our village in the last month, but that's better than the prior month, which was 45%. There's a new strain of the coronavirus that seems to be spreading much faster. So I ask that you please maintain wearing a mask, washing your hands, and being socially distanced when around others. And John, would you like to talk about the governor and the rolling metrics.
Yes, Your Honor. So the governor has issued a statement saying that as of right now, we're in tier 3, which means that there is no indoor dining at restaurants or gaming facilities are closed. When we reach certain metrics, which are less than 12% positivity rate in a 7-day rolling average for 3 consecutive days, when we have greater than 20% intensive care and hospital beds available for corona victims for 3 consecutive days, and a decrease in the region's COVID-19 hospitalizations on a rolling average out of 7 out of the last 10 days. Once we meet all of those criteria, the governor may issue an order allowing restaurants to open at reduced capacity and open gaming parlors. Right now, the region 10, which is Western Cook County, meets those criteria. So we are expecting the governor to announce tomorrow the reopening on at least a partial basis, the restaurants and gaming facilities in the region. So Indian Head Park. So we will wait to hear from the governor, but it looks like we are moving in a very good direction.
Thank you, John. If you're interested in a vaccine survey and to receive notices from the Cook County Department of Public Health, we have posted on our website and our social media platforms a link to the survey and how you can sign up to get those updates. And just for the record, there are 4 people here in the Village Hall, and we are all at least 17 feet apart. So that's why we don't have masks on. All right, sidewalks. There are 4 main areas in the Village Sidewalk Master Plan. Acacia Drive, which will be added next year as the Acacia Drive has a new road. John will be talking about that a bit in his report. Plainfield Road and Wolf Road are both in a phase 1 study, and we expect sidewalk or pedestrian access as part of those projects. And then Joliet Road, we have no plan of action set at this time. A 294 update. That work continues in our area with the on and off ramps, sewers on the west side of the tollway, and bridge work in our area has started. Village goals. The village board is starting a yearly process to discuss and then establish a few high priority village-wide goals. This is the way that this board communicates some high level initiatives, and we'll have an agenda item on this more later. And then lastly, the League of Women Voters will be hosting a village trustee candidate forum on March 9th. More information to come as it becomes available. Thank you. Okay, we're at this point in the meeting for public comments. Is there anybody on the Zoom call that would like to make a comment? I don't see any hands going up. Anybody, if you want to make a comment, there is another opportunity at the end of the meeting, but
Mayor Hinshaw,
going once.
Mayor Hinshaw,
Yes.
before you move on, I want to get a clarification about something that you said about the Acacia Drive. You said that it would be started a lot, you know, the drive and the sidewalk would begin next year. I think you mean 2021 for that, don't you?
You are correct. Thank you.
Okay. This year. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. This summer, in a few months. John will cover that, but I believe it started in April, but more in a few minutes. Anybody, public comments?
I have a question from Joan Metz. When will the police be getting body cameras?
Want to answer that?
I will. It is under discussion as we speak. Yesterday. or this
John,
week-
that's not quite what I said. I said, what is the status of them getting body cameras, not when? But you can go
Okay.
ahead and answer.
Okay. What is the status? So The question is, all right, so body cameras have just been mandated by some legislation that was passed this week that has yet to be approved by the governor. So that is by 2025, I believe. We are in the process of researching electronics and technology in the police department as we speak. We had a committee meeting this afternoon where this was a topic of discussion. So we will be researching that and getting back to the board when that research is completed.
Is there a
Thank you.
target
Any
date or a timeline for that? That's pretty open-ended.
Yeah, I would say that in what was passed recently at the state level, that was 2025. Very preliminary, we talked maybe 2024, but again, very preliminary news. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Linda has a couple that were sent in via email.
All right, the first public comment that I have is from Sharon Kalinowski, and she would like to discuss the Willow Hills Restaurant and Indoor Dining. She said, several weeks ago, I noticed that Willow Hills Restaurant was allowing indoor dining, which is against the current COVID phase governor's orders. I called attention to this by emailing the mayor, village administrator, and police chief. I walk by there at least 3 times a week, and every time I clearly see people dining indoors. Why isn't anyone enforcing the indoor dining ban? This is a serious health risk to people, especially in our area. Also, I noticed that 4 people present in Village Hall for the December meeting were not wearing masks during the meeting. Why is the guidance to wear masks indoors to avoid spreading the COVID being ignored? It is your health as well as the general public. Thank you. And the second comment I have.
Oh, hang on. John, do you want to, or we'll get the second one? Okay. Sorry, Linda. Thank you.
No problem. The second comment is from Dale Holmquist. She wrote, will you please clarify what actions you are taking regarding indoor dining that is still happening at all IHP restaurants? I have been told that they are being cited and reported, but what does this mean? Are there businesses and alcohol licenses in jeopardy for totally disregarding the dining mandates? I am all for supporting and ordering food from our local businesses during this horrific time. But when I'm told you have to dine in to use a Groupon that they've offered, I think more action is needed to be taken. No, thank you. New Year's parties took place despite the restrictions. The health and safety of our community is at risk. COVID cases continue to surge weekly. And until we are all abiding by the same guidelines, we will never control this pandemic. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Linda. John, would you like to?
My answer is in 2 parts. The first part is why I am not wearing a mask right now. The village president and I are physically located at Village Hall. We are 17 feet apart and we are facing in different directions from each other. Anybody else in Village Hall is more than 30 feet from me. So we feel that we are protected and we are abiding by safe practices for COVID prevention. And anybody else associated with the village is remote, so they're not at Village Hall. As to the indoor dining, we used a stepped approach to dealing with alleged violators of the indoor dining mandate. First, I had conversation with each of the owners of the 3 establishments in the village regarding no indoor dining. Second, we sent letters to each restaurant. Third, we issued a citation through our adjudication process. We reported multiple times to Cook County Health Department and they are responding. And we have also informed the state police of these violations. Our next step in the process is to call the State Liquor Commission. We are using a measured step approach that is recommended by our risk management agency Irma. We feel that the actions we are taking are measured and appropriate. And that is what we are doing right now.
Thank you, John. Any other public comments? Last chance. Okay, on to the agenda, consent agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to consider the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rita and Chris. Treasurer Garcia, would you like to present a finance update, please?
At the beginning of December, cash on hand was 3 million. Revenues taken in for the month of December were about 203,000. Payables were 466,000. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary, with an ending cash balance of December 31st of 2.7 million.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments from the board on the consent agenda items? Okay, hearing none. Consent agenda items, we approve regular meeting minutes. We approve the payables for the period ending December 31st. We approve a preliminary financial report, month ending December 31st, and the ordinance to reduce the number of Class B liquor licenses. Okay, one last shot. Any questions or comments about that from the trustees? Okay, Clerk Allison, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Farrell Mayor,
Aye.
Trustee Metz,
Aye.
Trustee Conboy,
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy,
Aye.
Trustee Wittenberg,
Aye.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Thank you, that passed.
All right, thank you all. Next up is new business. Item A, green electrical aggregation. This is a presentation by Andy, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So since last month's board meeting, village staff has been working with the Northern Illinois Municipal Electric Collaborative, or NIMEC, on looking at and researching options for renewing electrical aggregation. And on the Zoom call tonight, we have with us Sharon Derling from NIMEC, who has been very helpful helping me and John in the process and looking at our options. Sharon, would you want to just really quickly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about NIMEC, and then I can go on more?
Sure. Northern Illinois Municipal Electric Collaborative. Sorry, it's a mouthful. We need to change our name, but we're good at what we do, just not the name. We are consultants for communities all the way from north in Zion to south in Kankakee County, and have been enabling since 2011. We've worked with over 110 communities in helping them manage their electric aggregation programs. Initially, it was great savings for residents. Market rates have evened out now, so we've kind of pivoted to a different benefit for communities that Andy's been researching. And we have like a 99% retention rate. I think Andy did a little homework in reaching out to some of the communities that we work with. I don't know, Clarendon Hills, Tinley Park, kind of in your area, Elmhurst, etc.
Thank you, Sharon. And Sharon will be able to help answer any of the more technical questions that I may not know. But so far, NIMEC actually has been able to solicit some indicative bids. And while they're not final, they do present a pretty good idea of what we're looking at for final bids. And we solicited bids for both a traditional fixed rate aggregation program, as well as the new green aggregation, or at ComEd rate program. In regards to the fixed rate program, unfortunately, the lowest offer available was still above the ComEd rate, so there would be no savings for residents there. However, there are options there are a couple different options for the village to consider for green aggregation. Another important thing that Sharon was able to help us with is kind of getting a better idea of what a green aggregation or at ComEd rate aggregation program would look like. So if the village board decided to go with that, what would happen would be some of the ratepayers would remain with ComEd's supply service, while others would be supplied by the new alternative supplier selected by the board. And the reason for this is because the cost of generating electricity for each account varies so much because of usage patterns. And so the ratepayers that would remain with ComEd supply service, they would remain there because the cost of generating their electricity is above what is covered by the ComEd rate. The accounts that would be transitioned to the new supplier would be so because they are under the cost of generating electricity for them is under the ComEd rate, and that's what allows the suppliers to make a profit. And that's why they do it. But overall, everyone is still paying the ComEd rate. Everybody would be paying what they're paying now. They would still receive one monthly bill from ComEd. Nothing essentially would change in regards to their delivery and the amount that they are paying. So if the board does want to establish a green aggregation program or a at ComEd rate program, the names are switchable. There are a couple different options to consider. First, the board could implement a 100% green energy aggregation program, which would entail the purchasing of what is called renewable energy certificates. And renewable energy certificates, they basically represent the attributes and benefits of renewable energy. And whenever I think it's 1 megawatt hour of electricity is generated, a certificate is also created. And anybody who claims to purchase renewable energy or use renewable energy has to either have like solar panels up on their building or has to be purchasing these RECs, renewable energy certificates. Alternatively, another option is the village could establish a program with less than 100% green energy and accept a payment from the supplier. This payment is called a civic contribution, and it can vary depending on the supplier and also the amount of green energy selected. The lower the amount of green energy selected, the higher the contribution typically is. And the reason for that is because currently green energy is a bit more expensive to generate than traditional forms of electricity. And so that's why the civic contribution would be lower, because the civic contribution is essentially the supplier sharing a portion of the profit with the village. Oftentimes, municipalities who do take the civic contribution use that money for environmental related projects. Out of the municipalities I talked to, most of them went with the just 100% aggregation program. And Sharon would have a better idea because she works with hundreds of them. But there is a mix too, so that's something to consider. I guess going forward, if the board is interested, we can look for final bids in which all of you will be able to look at the options available and make a decision on whether or not you want to go with 100% green energy, 50% green energy, or anything in between, or from 0 to 100, and what kind of civic contribution we would like. But with that, I guess I'd open up to any questions for myself or Sharon related to aggregation.
Andy, I have a couple questions. Just to clarify, the green aggregation program is completely voluntary for the resident, so they don't have to join if they don't want to.
Yes, yeah, John, I meant to say that too. So if the program was implemented, everyone in the village would receive a letter. The people who would be selected for the alternative supplier would get a letter saying, you've been selected, you're able to opt out at no cost if you would like. Then people who would still stay with the ComEd supply service would get a letter as well. Even though they're still getting the ComEd supply service, they would still be paying towards the purchasing of the green energy which is beneficial for the whole village. And then there's also, Sharon was able to share this with me, is there's about 13% of accounts currently in Indian Head Park who have already chosen alternative suppliers. And almost all of these accounts are probably paying above the ComEd rate. There's various reasons why they might have established their own private contract, but they would also be given letters letting them know about the new program should they wish to join it as well. But everybody would be paying the ComEd rate, and everybody has the option to opt out should they choose.
Thank you.
Andy, can I ask a question? And Sharon, by all means, if this is more a question towards you, can you kind of just bullet point what the benefits are to the village and or residents? I mean, I understand the difference that you've talked about so far, but why entertain this?
Yeah, so the main benefit of if you chose the a higher percentage of green energy would be the promotion of renewable energy. You know, this is something that I think in 2018, Sharon would know about this. Sharon, would you go into that? I forgot what group
Sure.
was these?
Sure, would be happy to. We started this in 2018. I think Clarendon Hills was the very first community, and we just finished off Arlington Heights and Buffalo Grove. But Trustee Kennedy, to your question, what's the benefit? Residents are currently paying the ComEd rate. There'd be no change to their billing. They get their same bill, they pay the same rate. Then why do it? Well, a couple things. If renewable energy is a high value to the community, that's one consideration. Again, like your previous program you did in 2012, anyone may opt out. It's called customer choice. It's the law of the land in Illinois on electricity. The EPA ranks communities across the United States in terms of volume of green energy consumed. And the 14 of the top 17 are communities in Illinois ComEd territory, all of our clients. So the communities are real proud of that. They like that. Even if you got a smaller percentage, Indian Head Park could make the ranking. You would be designated an EPA green power partner. You get the logo, and EPA would actually ship some signage you can post in the village, two big, outdoor signs, if that's a high value. And the other side of that, Trustee Kennedy, is some communities, I'm going to throw out like Oak Park, for example. Green sustainability is a high value for them, but they elected to take zero renewable energy and rather take the civic contribution. So rather than spend monies toward the green energy, they accepted that money for themselves to use for their own super local, you might say hyper local sustainability projects. Some communities are thinking electric car charging stations, clean up a park, new, COVID budgets have kind of been blown up, and some new like recyclable bins to help finance. So that's those two things.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions from the board for Andy or Sharon? Any thoughts on direction? I'm sorry, it sounds like I cut somebody off.
Well, that was me. My apologies, Mayor. I think I cut in, but just going to point out there, the civic contribution for the community might be as high if you chose like the Oak Park Way, or Norridge went this way, said, well, we won't take the green energy, but we'll take the funding. Could be in the direction of about $30,000 annually paid each month to the community. And if you've got a little project that you've been looking to fill a hole, that might be helpful for that. Or if you're thinking, we don't need the extra funding, we really want to support the environmental projects, you can go 100% renewable, and you would be ranked pretty high by the EPA in there nationally. So that's just a badge of honor and an actual something you can do at zero added cost for sustainability.
So Sharon, if we selected the civic contribution route, where is that money coming from? And why wouldn't we do it? It sounds like a no-brainer if everybody remains paying the same amount.
Mayor, I've heard that term no brainer from some other communities. Maybe it was Tinley Park, I'm not sure. It's just a matter of communicating the residents, the new value that you're bringing them. What happens is a certain portion of the community, maybe 50 or 60% of the residents, could be served at the ComEd rate, and the supplier, based on this, what I'll call a usage profile, think that they can make a profit, the actual cost to serve versus that ComEd rate. So with that profit, they're willing to share that with you. That's part of the bid to set up the program to help benefit the community. If you're looking for any downside, you can talk to the 60 communities we're doing it for, all of Kankakee County, city, and every village. And I know Andy's reached out and spoken with them. I'm going to say no downside. The only thing I can think of is if suddenly their ComEd rate were to spike. Well, no, you'd be locked in at the ComEd rate, which is what you're paying today. If the market were to change and you could go to bid and get a savings versus the ComEd rate, and as Andy shared, that's not possible right now because all our competitive bids were higher than ComEd. So I don't see a downside. It's just a matter of communicating to the residents and sending out letters and taking questions at Village Hall.
So can I just, maybe we could discuss that. So we've gone through a recent transition to another vendor for our refuse services. And we all know that there's transitions that happen and there's costs associated with anything that you change. Sometimes they're hard costs and sometimes they're softer intangible costs. So, we went through this once with aggregation with, it seemed to be fairly easy to go through that the first time we did it. And we were able to pass on cost savings through that aggregation. So I think what we're all talking about here is there's being this green strategy, right? If it's a high value to the board and to the village, is there something that we're missing on the admin or the transition side that maybe we're missing?
I can speak to that a little bit. I've talked to Andy about that. We work really hard on communication, and we tried to take all the load off Village Hall. We draft copy for a press release, for a website, for newsletters or email blasts. We even draft a social media campaign. Don't know how active or how much you want to use there. Say on Facebook, say residents, you can expect to receive a letter this week that might mitigate a barrage of calls to Village Hall. People talk about it and they see to expect a letter, so they're not surprised. We work hard on communication. We take calls directly from your residents with our own NIMAC toll-free service. In fact, some communities, they get voice messages and they email them directly to us. So the customer service, after doing this 11 years, we think we fine-tuned it pretty well, and we want to take the load off the community, off the administration and staff, because we understand they don't, need to be able to answer all these electricity questions that we electric nerds can easily help residents with, and we're happy to do that.
I would also say, Trustee Winberg, from the staff members from other municipalities that I've spoken with, they all said that the administration side of it was pretty minimal, and that NIMAC was very helpful in any kind of the implementation or transition.
Other questions or comments? Anybody at this point want to weigh in on whether we should proceed, or any thoughts, or we could do that after the meeting some point in the next month?
Tom, I'll share my quick thoughts, 2 cents. I'm for it. I think this is something that is, I hate to use this phrase, but going to be forced upon us soon anyway. I mean, it's I think it's obvious that the more green we can come as a society and a country, the better it will serve us all. So, you know, aside from not having numbers in front of me and really being able to look at the cost, I don't see anything here that would keep me from not wanting to pursue more of this.
Thank you, Sean. Anybody else? Okay. I will try to gather some input over the next few weeks from trustees to see about our direction moving forward. John, sound good to you? Thank you, Andy, very much. And Sharon, thank you. Next item, B, the auditor and the selection of. John, is this you?
The village went out for quotes for auditing services. If you remember last year, we extended Sikich for 1 year because we only got one quote from auditing firms. We went out again this year. This year we got 2 quotes. The margin between the Sikich quote and Selden Fox, who was the other company bidding, was $725 thereabouts. Selden Fox being lower. However, because we only got 2 quotes, I'm recommending that we stay with Sikich for another year and that we repeat the RFQ process going forward next year. There's no reason to leave Sikich at this time. We are just testing the marketplace, and they do provide excellent service for us. So I would request renewing Sikich for a 1-year term.
John, any idea why we only had 2 bids?
One, we're a very small community, and there's been a lot of consolidation in the auditing firms, and I think some just don't want to come out and visit us to do the legwork for the audit because of COVID.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I just want to say that I agree with John that we should put it off for another year. There wasn't enough savings to justify all the extra work and starting up with a new company again.
Especially at this time. I agree with you as well.
Anybody else on the board?
I'm
Yeah.
fine going with Sikich again.
I am too. Yeah, $500 difference, and everything that John said about consolidation and COVID, it makes sense. So hopefully next year is a different year.
Okay, thank you. We will proceed with Sikich. Next item is the budget process outline, expected opening balances. John, is this you again?
Yes, it is. All right, so we have established a fund reserve policy of 4 months operating expenses. That means at any given moment, we should have about at least $1.3 million in the bank. And this also means that before we do any major capital work, we have to have cash in hand to pay for it. Even with fluctuations on a month-to-month basis, we've been able to maintain this minimum cash balance for the last couple of years. And we've had a pandemic right now, but we were anticipating reduction in revenues, and we did the budget accordingly a year ago. Last year, we ended the fiscal year with about $2.4 million in cash in the bank. $500,000 of that was money we received from the tollway for the sale of property, a one-shot deal. But that being said, it looks like we're going to end this fiscal year with revenues over expenses of about $534,000. So we're going to have about $1.1 million for capital spending on top of the $510,000 in tollway money. We've started talking to the department heads about their budget wishes for the new year. At the February meeting, you will get the first look at the budget. Needless to say, the requests from the department heads are numerous. They think big. We're looking at a new truck for Public Works, increasing our technology in the police department, our annual road program, and pump house repairs. There's also a number of things that we're looking at, talking about with village goals. So all of that's going to go in. The various committees will look at the budget requests. The finance committee will look at it, and the village board will ultimately look at it at 3 separate meetings: the February meeting, the March meeting when we have the public hearing, and the April meeting that we vote on it. We want to be transparent and accept lots of ideas, but ultimately we're going to have a balanced budget for the new year, and will be our process. So that's kind of where we are. And if anybody has any questions, please just ask me now or email me, and I'll be happy to answer.
When will the first finance committee meeting be, you know, John?
I'd like to have it sometime next week or the week after that, definitely before the February board meeting, and I will leave that up to the finance co-chairs to make that call maybe later on tonight in the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
So to piggyback on Trustee O'Loughlin's question, at the February meeting, you'll get pretty much 90% of the budget. You'll get it formatted, you'll get the narrative, and then any major tweaking we'll do thereafter. So, but the budget estimates will be pretty accurate, and we'll see the process.
John, given the pandemic situation, I'm sure that impacts us financially. Are there any state or federal relief or grants we're entitled to that are available because of that?
Yes, we got $115,000 from the CARES Act that we're using for police salaries. All we had to do is submit payroll for a month, and we got $115,000. Andy told me that the check is in the mail. Other than that, we've getting small grants for COVID, but to be honest, well, of course I'm honest, our sales tax revenues haven't really taken a dive in total. Yeah, a number of the restaurants are closed or they were closed and we're losing gaming revenue, but we're making up sales taxes in other areas. So all in all, between that and the grant money we're getting from the state for the Rebuild Illinois money, the village is actually coming out a little bit better financially than I anticipated. It's, in my mind, very weird, but nonetheless, it's there. And we go over the numbers every 2 weeks, Helly and I do. So I think we are on solid financial ground. And yes, we do go after the grants when we can. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to go to the next item on the agenda, D, village-wide goals. I mentioned this briefly in the mayor's report. This board has worked in the past to set 3 traditionally, but it could be 3, 4, or 2 set of major goals. So at this point in the process, we have collected some potential ideas, and I want to run through those and then hopefully get some discussion on either pluses or minuses for some of the goals. And these are kind of short versions. If we get serious about a goal, we'd have to get close to dollar amounts, timeframes, that kind of stuff. But these are just kind of ideas, and that can be expanded if we want to move forward. I'm just going to read this from a list. Black Hawk Park improvements, things like a playground or sport court. Security cameras at neighborhood entrances. A playground or a park at the Heritage Center. Potential savings for any church-related effort. And that could be well over $1 million if we're going to do anything with the church. Investigate if all of the village could be associated or part of the Pleasantdale Park District. Acacia Drive improvements above and beyond the normal road construction. Examples like better landscaping or other improvements. Another similar is to save money for Wolf Road improvements over the normal road construction. In the example that's been presented is a fencing and landscaping similar to timber trails along Wolf Road, and that could be well over $1 million if we went that route. More community events like movies in the park or a car show. A village dashboard and master list of action item tickets and projects and other things that would be included. Village administration, public works / water and police operational and technical infrastructure evaluation and review. Implement an annual priority and planning methodology that integrates best practices for short and long-term planning and priorities in the village. Grant management resource for both short and long-term. And the last one, that the fence policy changes needed to be decided and concluded for Bartlett homes and across the village. Any comments from the board on those potential or suggested goals for 2021-2022 year?
Yeah, Tom, if I can interject, the last one that you read, I was going to kind of touch upon on trustee reports, but at our last fence and shed meeting, we did finalize the fence aspect of it to send on to Public Works. So just, for planning and zoning. So just to let the rest of the board know, as far as that one's concerned, I think we're moving along nicely on that. Not saying that you can't choose that, but definitely something that's going to be probably in front of us. John, correct me if I'm wrong, in another meeting or two for a board to decide. So just an FYI.
And Sean, I think you plan to give a little more detail about that in your committee or your trustee report. So thank you for bringing that up. Any other comments, plus or minus on any of those?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, no surprise, the Heritage Center Park does interest me. I'm not looking for a playground there, but I am interested in making that a user-friendly lot next to the Heritage Center, and perhaps down the road, if the Lionsville Church works out for us, maybe we could replace the library at the village, at our new village hall, if it ever comes to that. And we would have a very nice park by getting rid of the building there. But for now, we've got a big yard that doesn't get much use. I noticed that Public Works did get the picnic bench and the swing installed recently, which is great. But now we need maybe some paths, just gravel paths like we have in Kelly's Playground Park. So yeah, that's something I'd like to see, a little bit of a design and maybe something that would attract people there, as well as Arrowhead Park, maybe do more than just a village sign.
Tom, I'll piggyback on top of that to maybe expand that a little bit. And then I've also got a couple of questions. Across the street from South Campus on Willow Springs Road seems to be a little community garden, for lack of a better phrase. That's something else that I thought of in that area where people can donate their time, just have like, again, if you look at the boxes that they have over there, there's also one I know behind Highlands Elementary School that the students help with too. But I thought that would be something that might interest some people that don't have, like, personally here, Julie and I do things in what she calls these upright boxes, but we're limited on space because we don't have a large backyard. but that's something that I know that she'd be interested in doing on weekends. I'm definitely very much in the favor of security cameras at the entrances. I personally just 2 days ago had cameras installed on my own home because we had an incident here a month or so ago. So very much interested in doing that. I think that is a great deterrent. If we have signage, obviously, incorporated with that for anybody coming in the community to see that. The last one, just to pick the three, is the incorporation in Pleasantdale Park District. Having gone through there with my kids, I wish we would have did this 10 years ago, but I think this community definitely takes part in that park district as it is. If there's a way for us to lower costs to residents, I know that they have some great programs over there.
Thank you, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Just to piggyback on Sean's in regards to the Pleasantdale Park District, Tom Hinshaw and we went there a few years ago and we talked to Matt Russian in regards to having the village, the rest of the village annex into with the Pleasantdale Park District. We would actually have to be on the taxing part of it, and they did think that Burbridge would bring us into it, but we can join any other activities that they have, and that it's a slightly higher fee. And that, but we did try to do that a few years ago, if Tom remembers, talking to Matt. So that was something, because we thought that would have been a great idea as well. And
yeah, and Brenda, I think that, if we looked into it again, maybe we could do something like we did with the library, where we get the park district to give us a in-district rate or something. So anyway, it's a potential idea.
And yes, absolutely.
Any other comments?
The security cameras, I'm in total agreement in that. In fact, we had a meeting earlier with the police chief in regards to, that's one of his things that if it would be one of his number one things to get the security cameras as well, because you know who's coming in and out of the community, and it would be a win-win situation for the entire village. So that would be my number one priority.
Yeah, John, we looked into that in the past. Then former trustee Glenn Mann was a big proponent of the security cameras. Did we ever get any pricing?
We did and this is a couple years old, the quote, and for like 24 cameras, it was in the neighborhood of $95,000. And that was just a quote that I got a number of years ago. So we could revisit it. That's a large number of cameras. We could actually back it off and see where we go from there. But we're just starting to research it again now.
Okay.
John, what were those numbers again? Just out of curiosity.
It was about $95,000 for 24 cameras and associated video equipment.
Okay. So just because I literally did this 3 days ago, I got 4 cameras and they ran about $650 a piece on my math. And the math that you just did was about $39,000, almost $4,000 a piece.
Sean, just one note, there's a whole system behind this that they can run missions and the police can monitor and do different things. So the chief is going to do an evaluation of the options. It's not an apples to apples with what you would purchase from Costco or Comcast. It is a little bit different. And these cameras also have input and integration into other systems that they can also use the video and the still pictures for investigations that use AI to be able to tag people and do different things. So those costs that John got were several years ago when Glenn Mann did an investigation of cameras. I think we're going to find that the technology is, gotten much better, as you just saw from buying these new cameras that you got. Mm-hmm. But there is an infrastructure and an actual process and workflow that we're going to have to integrate, because the cameras are only as good as the data that is collected and used from the cameras.
And I absolutely get that. And I was not at all trying to compare that it would be apples to apples, but I think it's got to be closer than a $700 to $4,000 variance would be my guess. And I was, the only thing else I would say is, John, if you need somebody else to spearhead this and look into it, I'm more than happy to, because I just spent some time doing it obviously here. So it's something I'm passionate about.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments on the goals?
Tom, do you have a date as to when you want us to decide for sure and vote? Is it next meeting or 2 meetings out?
Ideally, it would be next meeting. So what we have done in the past to help, because we have a dozen or 14 goals, is individually I have talked to trustees to kind of get a ranking, and then get the top 3 or 5 that next month, if we meet, we would be able to talk to fewer goals rather than 12 or 14. And then that also gives time in the next month. Let's say it is security cameras, for the chief to get a better number to plug in, because we could say we're all for improvements in Blackhawk Park, not knowing if that's $10,000 or $100,000. I'd love to get it narrowed down today, but I know, with a group trying to get 14 or whatever it is down to 3 may be rough. But yes, I would like to ideally have the board approve at the next board meeting in February.
Are you going to do the matrix that you did before, Tom? Before you put these in a matrix and we put numbers associated with them? And that's how we eliminated the ones?
Yeah, if we don't get it consensus tonight, yes, that would be my next course of action.
And will we have a report soon from the architect on the Lionsville Church? Give us some direction on what might be possible there?
We have 2 reports from the architect firm, Ellen. One is a structural, kind of how the building is, that's due the end of this month. And then the end of next month is a preliminary design. Is that right, John? I believe that is correct. So hopefully the end of this month, yes.
So, that's a big expense, we assume, if it's something we move forward with. I would think we need to be careful with our spending in case that's something that our money will go towards.
Well, Chris, when we were talking about this too, the other one on the list that has the same sort of, timeline associated with it is the whole Wolf Road discussion too.
Right. I'd like to see that, some money spent for that if we're going to make improvements there. But that's like what, 3 or 4 years before that's completed?
I would say that's 3 years, but if we're going to save $250,000 a year as an example, that may take 5 years to get to that amount. And I think if we were going to do something on Wolf Road, we would certainly work with the county, but pretty much they would install the road, any pedestrian access, get it done, and then probably the following year do any work. So that's at least 3 years out, but depending on how big we want to go, may need to save part of any money we have.
Yeah, I just
but Rita, I put you down as a positive for that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I find it hard to have an exact direction until we know, until we have more information. It's hard to commit to something not knowing what the potentials are.
Well, and the other thing too that we could do is some of these things are operational in nature. To me, if the police department and the police committee, everybody establishes the goal to be technology oriented, and we go out and get bids and we have the money to do that, then that would be more of an operational goal that we would establish in the police department for police technology. So that would be covered under the police budget. So that wouldn't have to be in this, it would be a goal, but it would be more of a police operational goal. So the church then, or Wolf Road could be, maybe those are the bigger things we adopt, you know what I mean? Because they're huge. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a different type of more of a long-term, not to, but playground park at the Heritage Center is not going to be the same as $1 million plus project
Right.
at either the church or, so maybe it's, we've got our yearly goals. That's something that we hopefully can take care of in the next 11 months now, and
Right.
something that is projected for a 2, 3, 4 year project. And it's
Right.
two completely separate goal lists that we're following, long-term and more.
Well, Sean, a few years ago, we had the goal to improve pedestrian access. And so that, sidewalks or bike path or whatever. And that's a goal that we knew we couldn't get done in that year. But because of that focus of the board, we're still doing that years later. So I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think we have two lists, short-term and long-term. At least we haven't gotten to that level of complexity with our goals. Not to say we couldn't, because these are board goals.
Well, and I'm just bringing it up because I think more people are going to be, and maybe I'm wrong, but more board members might be put off on picking $1 million plus goal as opposed to something that might only cost, $40,000 in cameras. That I don't want somebody to not pick it because the number's too large.
So guys, I don't want to bring this off to derail the meeting, but I'm the one that put the goal about goal setting and priorities. And Tom and I have had many discussions about goal setting and priorities and operational goals and priorities. And maybe we can talk about this on an additional meeting or have an agenda item. But I think we need to have a very simple way that we communicate our strategic short and long-term goals. And then for each department, we need to be able to delineate and communicate what are our operational short and long-term goals for public works, water, police, finance, and administration. And I don't think we need to buy a system to do this. I don't think we need to go and buy some big fancy whatever Deloitte consulting gig. I think we can create a framework very easily to communicate these bigger things that are very strategic and lofty and big versus those operational things that, Justin and your department heads are doing anyway. So I'm certainly willing and able to give you guys a visual. We did it several years ago. It's not very pretty, but to your point, Sean, it's this yin and yang. It's these big ideas we have, but then we have these operational things that are really important too. So I don't want to belabor the point, and I know we have other things to do tonight. So I think we have to do a sort of a better job of framing that. I think we do a good job of thinking about it and talking about it, but I think framing it and communicating it, we could have do it better for all of us.
I am 100% in agreement with you, Amy, because one of my other questions that I wrote down here is, and I'm even embarrassed to say this, but what were all of last year's goals and where do we stand on those? Can anybody fully answer that question? I mean, I think that speaks exactly. And I'm sure you can, Tom. I'm absolutely sure you can, but and I'm not saying that we need to, do this, but I personally can't. And I'm embarrassed to say that. So based on what Amy just said, I think if we had that in place, everybody in the community, let alone the board members, would know exactly where we are and everything. And I think that's
right.
important.
And it's our goals, and it's look at what Justin and Don do in public works, right?
Yep.
They might have done 5 things last year, and I know they did many more than that, but let's say 10 things. And we should be able to communicate what are the 10 things they did so everybody can see that and understand that. And that's all it is. It's not to be a huge, fancy, overproduced thing. It's to say, what did we do in each department and how can we celebrate it?
And that is part of the budget process, so that should be included in the budget document. We always try to improve it every year, and that's an excellent thing that we should add to the budget process.
Well, and to Amy's point, maybe it's a line item agenda that we go down and talk about it. And because a goal is in my opinion meaningless unless we track it and know the outcome and where we stand and what was accomplished with it. And if we can highlight that, and it's not just on a budget plan, but we actually discuss it and bring it up, I think it carries much more weight.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of ways we can do this very easily graphically. Many villages and municipalities do this on a dashboard. That's a fancy word for a graphical way to show what you did.
Sean, I want to answer your question. Our goals for this current year: 1, proactive market of the triangle, PUD for 70th place, and refuge franchise agreement. So we have done the PUD for 70th place.
Yep.
We have implemented the franchise agreement, and we have done some proactive marketing in the triangle. I'd let Amy say if we've completed that or not. The year before, the goals, again, in a short condensed version, were improve pedestrian access, leaf pickup, and improve infrastructure.
So again, based on that, does more proactive marketing for the triangle, should that carry over to this year? Because it may have been done,
That's
but
up to the board.
Right. So
whatever you guys want to do.
But to my point is, it's not on the list of 13 that we just went over. And now that you mention it, I absolutely remember it, but I would not have been able to come up with that.
Right,
So
but that should be on somebody's operational goal somewhere. We can't just say, oh, we didn't finish it and it's nowhere, right? So that's what I'm talking about. This is a conversation that's bigger than just what we're talking about tonight. I've talked to several trustees about it, and there's no right way to do it. It's just moving towards trying to do it a little bit differently. There's no right way to do it, and we don't have to make it complicated. It's just moving towards maybe a little more communication and a little bit more documentation of what we do strategically, tactically, operationally.
I lost Amy. I think you're muted.
I'm done. I think you heard my last.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just, we could go on, and it's probably not the right venue to do that. So maybe we put it on the agenda for next month.
Anybody else on any goals that we haven't heard from, talked about?
The only comment I have about the goal about infrastructure, technology infrastructure, is I don't think we've really, well, maybe we have, but I want to make sure that we've evaluated the technical infrastructure of the village. That means the technology in administration. And what I mean by that is there an accounting system we should be integrating? Journaling system we should be integrating? That's just an example in finance. Is there something we have to do for the continuity of our village from a technology standpoint that we don't know about because we've never had an audit of our operations? So finance was just one that I brought up. It could be, what should we be doing with the email system? What do we have to do with the website moving forward? Do we have what we need, or do we need to improve it? What do we need to do in water? Do we, I know you guys have a plan, a capital plan for water. So I just want to make sure that we have the right bones or foundations of the village, and that we haven't overlooked anything because we've never really done an audit of our operational infrastructure. So again, that was one of mine. It's, probably hard to get your arms around, but I would hate to go spend, money on something else and find out we should have done something in the water department that we just didn't know because we had never audited the systems. And I know we probably have, John, that might be a bad example, but like the accounting example, or I know that Linda uses a system to do the water billing. That's another example.
Well, just
So maybe on that goal, the word audit would be good, because then I think we could, I want to say, pay an outside firm, somebody with, no ties to what we're doing, come in and do an audit of our systems. But I don't know if I'm adding to your goal when you don't think that should be added to.
Well, no, I don't know how the right way to do it is, because not one vendor is going to be able to audit all these things. But I just think maybe we pick 1 or 2 departments a year and we start making sure that we have the right systems, because it's easy to say, oh, we have Google Mail, we'll just use that forever, right? So I don't know. I just want to make sure we have the right roadmap for our technical infrastructure, because we always talk about the pipes and the water pipes and the roads, but there's a real digital infrastructure that we have, and we have to make sure it's the best it can be. And I know, John, you just installed a new VPN, and I know we transitioned the phones to a couple years ago to
Yep.
internet protocol and all that. So I just want to make sure that we've got everything covered in there.
I agree, and we have done an evaluation of the administrative systems. We could talk more during the budget process for this, but for instance, our accounting package, we did have some different pieces together that we have merged from different companies. So we're now on a more single platform for our accounting package and water billing. So I understand exactly what you're looking at. So, and we can talk more during the finance committee for this.
But that's, I think, a good point, John, that you brought up. Like we talked about the security cameras. I think, what I heard today in the meeting was kind of a one-off. Let's see what cameras are and how they integrate. Maybe we need to see how a security camera can fully integrate into our website and, everything that we have if we're going down that path. So I think that is a good idea. All right, any other comments? I think we have some list, but far from narrowed it down. So I will be working in the next week to see if I can talk to the trustees to get it narrowed down, to have a shorter list for the meeting next month. And then as we narrow the list down, we would need to add some dollar amounts, if there is a dollar amount. Not all these are dollar amounts. I think Amy's example of the planning methodology may not have a dollar amount, just a different way to do it. All right, any other final comments or thoughts?
Are you going to send out the matrix then so we can grade them?
Yes, in the next week I
yeah.
will be doing that, yes. Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving along. Reports, trustee, will go around the dais. Sean Comboy.
No report.
Thank you, Sean. Sean Kennedy.
So as I mentioned before, the Fence and Shed Committee finalized 3 changes or ideas to pass on to planning and zoning. They'll do what they need to do and work with the attorney, Patrick, I'm sure, before it comes to the board, but I would expect that soon. The next meeting is scheduled for the 19th of this month at 7 p.m. It'll be a Zoom. We'll have that information sent out and the agenda sent out to everybody ahead of time. And we're going to start talking about sheds. And we hope in a meeting or 2 to also have 2, 3, 4 bullet points of what our recommendations our sheds are. So we're hopefully going to be wrapping up soon.
Did you want to cover what the things that were approved?
Yes, and if I was more organized, I would have had that up and ready to go. I apologize.
I can jump in if you want.
If
to go to planning and zoning too first, so.
Yes, they are going to go to planning and zoning first.
I think the first one that was agreed upon was that a split rail or cowboy fence or other decorative type fence are okay as long as they're kept up, and they would need to be of natural wood looking a stain or just natural. They couldn't be painted orange as an example.
Correct.
Yes.
Sound right?
Yes.
And then I think the committee approved maybe 8-1 or 7-1 that any fence would have to come out at the time of a property sale. And I think the planning and zoning would be working on putting some parameters around that and also some maybe some guidelines, because anybody who does not have an approved fence today could apply through the planning and zoning. That was the third one, that anybody could seek a variance
For
from the-
variance, yes.
Yes.
And I think the last one, I think there were 4, I had at least 4, that definitions like for trellis needs to be updated or improved in the existing code.
Yes. So the existing code, because we were talking about some decorative pieces that people might have at different parts of their property, not necessarily a divider or a fence per se. So I just pulled up, but you were right on the cowboy or split rail. Cyclone stockade or any other fence must be removed unless the owner has received a variance from the village. If a variance has been received, the fence must be maintained and must be removed when the seller vacates the property, which is what you said. And then the last was anyone that wishes to add a fence at any time or keep a current fence that does not currently have a variance must seek approval before the village board. So we have passed those along and hope to do the exact same thing with sheds here shortly.
All right, thank you, Sean. Anything else?
No, sure.
Brenda, Trustee O'Loughlin,
No report.
thank you. Trustee Wittenberg,
Yes, I just wanted to do a report on the Winter Festival, and I wanted to do a shout out and thanks to many people that helped us with the Winter Festival. I think we had close to 200 people come to the Indian Head Park Winter Festival, where we had our Santa's reindeers visit the village, and Whispering Pines came, a farm that had some beautiful reindeer came, and the reindeer interacted with both adults and children. And I wanted to give a shout out to several people that helped us not only do the reindeer part of this, but also we had some games. We had a food drive for the food pantry at St. Cletus. We had a craft. We had some food, wrapped some snacks, I should say. And then we had some people that helped us with various things like Santa's sleigh, which was a golf cart that Acacia let us use. And these are the people that helped with the event, and we really want to thank them. The Lionsville Church, Pastor Sean and Judy Buckingham and Doug helped us immeasurably with different parts of the festival, including collecting over 2 vanfuls of food for the St. Cletus Food Pantry and over $150 of cash donations to the food pantry as well. So we want to thank them for really being part of the event. Also, Dante Stefanini and Blaze Knacker were both Santa. Dante was our Santa and Blaze with our elf. Amy Eckert helped from Acacia immeasurably, provided all of our tables, access to bathrooms, helped us set up and take down, and also Grace Mayer, who helped with both the craft and food. Bill King crafted our Santa sleigh, and Danielle Svetska and her daughter helped with the event. Brenda O'Loughlin, Linda Merrifield helped us immeasurably with planning and helping us keep organized. She is wonderful at organizing things. So I'm not sure if I forgot anyone. If I did, Brenda, if you want to pipe in. John, of course, is there to help us lead to getting everything done. And I know that Helia did cut our checks and send those to the vendor. So I thought it was a great venue, great attendance, great day. We had a snowball toss and crafts, and I think people really enjoyed it. So thank you all for supporting our day to get out in the nice weather and see the reindeer. That's all I have.
Thank you, Amy. Also had the District 106 Highlands Music Director, I think that's his title, Jim Koning. He did a wonderful job.
Yes, Jim Koning. Yes.
Thank you for all your efforts very much. It was very nice. Brenda, I don't know if I stepped on what you were going to say.
Oh, no, you're good. Thank you.
Okay, that's it, Amy.
Yes,
Continuing
thank you.
continue around the table. Chris, Trustee Metz.
Sure. At the Heritage Center, they were now checking out puzzles. You want to do a puzzle in all your spare time you have these days, you don't have to buy one. You could just check it out from the Heritage Center. Sharon Kalinowski, from I understand, donated a large number of them. Switching to Finance Committee, January 26th, that's a Tuesday, is a date we're looking at. Hopefully that will work. I see quite a few of you are on the meeting here who typically participate in those. Need let a few other people know, but that's the date we're working on. And that's all I've got, Tom.
What was that, January 22nd?
26.
26, thank you.
Do you know the time? By chance?
No, I don't. 6:30 probably, or 7. What's work best?
I think John just said 6:30.
Sounds good to me.
But we'll get a notice out, right, to the committee?
As a Zoom meeting, because we cannot gather.
Correct. All right, Rita.
No report. No report.
Smoke signals is soon going out,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, Linda put together the smoke signals, did a great job, and so that should be getting out fairly soon.
Thank you very much. Okay, Village Clerk, anything to report?
No report.
Thank you. Village Treasurer?
No report.
Thank you. Village Attorney?
No report. We'll be seeking a closed session later in the meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Village Administrator?
Just an update on the Acacia Drive construction. Bid should be let by the state of Illinois within the next month and a half. We're looking to start construction on the south section in May and July. The north section, August and October, with the final road road paving happening in October. What we're going to do is we're going to completely tear up the south side of Acacia Drive, basically to the sign in front of Village Hall, do all of that work, put down the binder course, and then do the same thing on the north side of Acacia Drive. And then at the end of October, or in the month of October, I should say, we will do the final lift on Acacia Drive. At no point will anybody not have access to their home. It might be a couple minutes, half hour or so while the pavement is installed or cooled. But other than that, that's going to be the schedule for the Acacia Drive. We've met with the homeowners associations. We've taken their input for the trees to be planted, and we also have the opportunity, if they want to buy additional trees, that we will put that as part of the project. So it's coming, and it's a federal grant, and hopefully by October we will have a completely new road.
John, again to update that erroneous report earlier in the meeting, the road is being done this summer?
This summer, May through October of 2021.
So,
thank you.
John, when do we get the, we haven't gone to bid yet? Did I miss that?
The state of Illinois is taking care of that for us. It should be awarded in February.
No. So it's out right now.
It should be on the street now or very close to it.
Okay, good.
I have not seen it yet, but It should be coming soon.
Do you have other updates? I know we talked briefly about the church.
I'm sorry. The church is still doing the evaluation. We should expect that at the end of the month. The architecture firm is meeting with the church, and they've done their tour of the church, and they will have the assessment by the end of January.
Is that it?
And then I'm going to turn it over to Andy, and we're going to talk about garbage. And we have Jake DiLiberto from SBC also on the call. So, Andy.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, John. First thing, so for the board, I think John shared it with you yesterday. I compiled a list of some of the concerns and complaints that we've received from residents regarding the waste franchise agreement, all the way from the very beginning, back before we even started pickup. So back in September when we were first starting the transition, up through just the beginning of this week. And so right now we are we're about halfway through the 4th month of pickup with SBC Waste Solutions. And so I broke down some of the concerns and complaints that we've gone into 7 different kind of categories. The first one, which is all the way from September 1st through kind of middle of October, is kind of complaints related to just the switch in service. And now these complaints didn't really even have to do with SBC's performance. They were mostly just complaints about people who didn't want to transition away from Groot, or people who may not have liked the collection day that we selected. The next kind of general area would be complaints about pickup with SBC. And these complaints could be anything from maybe they were skipped to an item wasn't taken. The recyclables were thrown away instead of recycled. And I would just say that in general with complaints, when we receive them, we often refer them directly to SBC so SBC can help them directly. In cases in which that's not able to happen, oftentimes I'll take the complaint and I will call Jake or send Jake an email, and they then help them out. And then another area would be the second week of collection. Remember, there was a truck that broke down. We received 10 calls about that. And then another category would be leaf vacuuming. And some residents would complain about maybe it took too long for their leaves to be vacuumed. Their house was missed, stuff like that. Another category is that some residents thought that the SBC containers were not the highest quality, so animals were destroying them. And then the 2 most recent categories would be in the beginning of January, when Ashbrook switched its collection day, there was an error on the SBC's mapping system, so that they were not picked up Saturday like they were supposed to, but the SBC sent the truck out the very next day on Sunday to get them. And then last week there was a new driver who made some mistakes with incorrectly tagging and not picking up non-SBC containers. And in regards to kind of our overall feeling about complaints, is there are times when we will receive a concern or complaint from a resident, and it may have been that the resident has made a mistake. Maybe they didn't put a sticker out on the thing they were supposed to. They didn't rake the leaves close enough to the street. So whenever that kind of happens, we work with SBC, and SBC has done a good job of working with the residents in those cases. And I'm sure Jay can talk a bit more about their response and what they've and their experience with the residents as well.
Andy, I just had a question. Do we have a total of both the calls that we received at the village, and has SBC shared how many calls they got each time as far as either compliments or complaints?
So I only have the village information. Jake may have the SBC information. Since the beginning, and this includes during the transition, We have received 44 calls, roughly, 8 emails, and then I also included on this breakdown just kind of an observation of Facebook comments. Although those are, you could say, wouldn't be official complaints, but there was 45 Facebook comments since the very beginning as well. And that's just the village side. Jake would be able to speak more towards what SBC has received.
Yeah, and maybe you guys can talk about it. Maybe Jake can talk about it. I mean, to me, you guys should be meeting or talk. I know you're talking every week, but I think they should be providing you with how many calls they're getting too, because on Facebook this week, there were people that were calling SBC. You're instructing them to call SBC. And I would like to hear how many complaint calls or compliment calls SBC is getting as a metric that's being tracked by SBC. So we can see the camera on the truck. We can see what happened on the truck. We also need to know the metrics on their phone, how many times their phone rang and what complaints they got and how it was resolved. And I think any vendor would be able to provide us that information in a weekly progress report that we receive via email. So I guess we're not getting that every week from him, from SBC?
Not currently. Or John, do you want to take?
I have not asked for that yet. I did ask Jake for a meeting next week, and we will be discussing it.
So we've had a transition to a vendor for 3 months and have not had a weekly transition call with them.
John, you're muted, John.
Jake and I talk pretty much every week, but I do want to look at the data, which I have not done yet. So that's on me.
Well, John, it's not just you. It's creating
Right.
Again, it's creating a foundation of what is acceptable service level. Key
Correct.
performance indicators. When Jake did his presentation to us, he suggested that we implement some type of customer satisfaction measurement so we know who's doing a good job. Obviously, that step wasn't taken.
John, is it? Do you mind if I chime in here?
Please.
Is my volume and everything okay?
You're good.
Okay, very good. So again, Mayor Tom, Board, Administrator DeRocher, I'm very pleased to be with you. I've directly managed and supervised roughly 16 municipal franchises in my career. And I have to be honest with you, Indian Head Park is one of my favorite communities because the residents, the board, it's a fantastic dynamic. And so just to compliment our partners at Public Works, they've worked hand in hand with us related to the leaf vacuuming and kind of communicating with residents that had some downed trees and make sure that wasn't included. And then also, I personally have been in the community every week during collection since we started. And I've had the privilege of talking to many of your residents firsthand. So currently, just a couple data points that we are happy for a detailed report that we can give at a moment's notice. Our customer response time, so residential response, is an average of 10 seconds, meaning that from the time a resident calls to the time that they talk to somebody is 10 seconds or less. A resident resolution time is under 60 seconds. So they get a call, they talk to somebody within 10 seconds, and whatever they need is resolved within 60 seconds on average. So these are great metrics, industry standard. The second point I would say, just in terms of the level of responses, I didn't pull a report of prior to our meeting, but I'm happy to tomorrow about the exact amount of calls. We do track that. We track the complaints, and we also have it's our president. Our president has relatives that are residents of your community, so it's very important to him. He has actually implemented an award board, so to the extent we get compliments, there are gold stars attached to those staff members who receive that, whether it's a driver or customer service. So we're tracking all of that, and we're happy to give you a detailed report on that. Related to I guess a capstone piece, and then I'll kind of pivot back to Andy for a conversational piece related to some of the calls. So prior to the village having a municipal franchise agreement, the village would have almost never received a phone call because all of these residents were considered commercial customers. They called the company directly and that was it. So a trustee or a mayor or anybody would have never had a conversation about it. And they paid a premium for that. Some of the residents were paying up above $30 per home. So, and no e-waste recycling, no paint recycling, none of this material was allowed. So there are added benefits to that, roughly 30% a month. And so as we begin to think about the frustrations that may have occurred related to, I asked for a trash container this size, but I actually got this one. Or, you know, my house wasn't picked up. Well, the house will be served as long as we get the call. That's no problem. Almost in every municipal franchise agreement. I live in the city of Chicago. You know, sometimes the trash guy doesn't come in the morning. So we call and then they come back. Some of those calls are kind of regular, normal municipal practices that perhaps is not regular previous to this year. So I would just ask for a little bit of understanding related to that. And then the final thing related to, I think, as a capstone piece, I hope we get to talk about a couple other things here. SBC took an enormous amount of financial burden and an enormous amount of human capital exposure to leaf vacuuming this year. And I think a lot of the trustees and maybe Mayor Tom were not aware of this, but there was situations where residents had their landscaping companies come and collect their landscaping material, and it would actually dump an entire stake bed, a 20-yard stake bed, on the curb. And we collected it. And there were residents that didn't even rake the leaves to the curb. And one of the partners of our company was literally talking to a resident, raking the leaves to the curb from the sidewalk of the person's house, just to make sure that the residents and the board knew how much we cared and how much we tried to validate that service. And so in the midst of all of this, also, there were residents or landscaping companies that put dirt and mulch and things at the curb that was just mixed in with the leaves that costed us probably about $12,000 of equipment damage to our leaf vacuum. So just as a couple points there, we care. We care an awful lot. And there was so much extra material on the street. We actually sent an additional crew of not landscaping crew, but union garbage drivers with shovels to shovel the streets of Indian Head Park of the dirt and the mulch and the not leaves, but just to make sure the material was gone. So I think some of that is kind of lost in a mix of, by my calculations of what we have and what the village has, less than 1% of the population of Indian Head Park called and made a complaint on a monthly basis. With that said, we're very proud of what we've done. We're very proud of our partnership, and we take great pride in what we do. And we've had less than 1% complaints. There are some things that we have some ideas to address, and we're happy. Hopefully, we can spend a couple minutes here, and John, and with your guidance to address as you want to. But there's we're very proud of what we've done, and we hope that the board sees the fine line of residential complaint as opposed to what was performed.
I appreciate your feedback. I think the only thing I'm trying to get to the bottom of is what were the numbers, right? You're saying it was less than 1%. So I can understand that. I just want to make sure that all the parties, both the village and the company, SBC, are having weekly discussions on the phone, talking about the metrics. We saw feedback, you can't always read, or believe Facebook, but I'm sure you saw them, Jake. They called, no one answered. I know there's probably multiple calls when things don't get picked up. So I just think during a transition, it's important. I know you probably talked to John or you talked to Andy, but I think it's important for the teams not just you, but your operations people with our operations people to have a weekly call or a bi-weekly call to make sure we understand what's going on. I saw a leaf pile for 3 weeks. And so I don't know, it's not my job. I just walk the village and I see things. So I know it's tough going through a transition. We all know transitions are tough and they're going to be bumps. And we saw that, we talked about it before we made this switch.
So yeah, just 2 points related to the weekly call and then the leaf sucking removal process. So I would say I probably bother John more than he actually cares to deal with. I talk to John at least twice a week, and he gets a feedback from me every Friday. And when collection is done, John gets a call and says, well, we're finished at this time, etc. If there's a complaint that comes in the middle of the day during collection, we get a call either from a resident or from Andy, and we respond to it right away. We are successfully completing all refuse collection by roughly 1:30 every week, which is roughly the same timetable that the residents had before. And then the piece related to the leaf piles, when we first started the leaf vacuuming, we began to talk about a number of different processes. Like, would you like us to do a portion of town and say, this is your day for the portion of town? Or should we just kind of try to knack it off as a hand? What we found, because it's been absent, this service has been absent from the community for a good portion of time, that some of the residents are, as we are, kind of trying to figure out what the best process is. So I heard something from, I'm gonna call John out. John said, you need to manage your expectations the same way our residents need to manage our expectations, which I think is great wisdom in terms of being that we are implementing this, and some residents will rake late, some residents won't rake at all. And so we'll go up and down a whole street, and then a day later, there's a giant pile. How do we handle that? So I think after this first year, all of the leaves were successfully completed, successfully vacuumed. All of the piles were successfully removed, with the exception of one pile left on a for sale house from a landscaping company that we saw dump, and we reported it. And we expect next year to be able to kind of more anticipate some of this stuff and kind of have a little bit of maybe photo taking. Street A, we completed this day. Street B, we completed this. But after the first year, it's hard to know exactly what you're going to get until you get. So again, we're proud of what we did. We over-serviced this community at a great financial loss to us. And we hope that the board recognizes that you don't send 6 union garbage men out with shovels to shovel dirt and mulch when you're supposed to be leaf vacuuming. And they recognize that, okay, there's more going on. We feel that next year is going to be a little bit smoother because we know more, and also the residents know more.
Jake, thank you for what you've gone through. I know change is hard for everybody. I know we changed dates for pickup. I know that we changed the company, and with that, the old company would pick up basically everything, but as part of our change, we altered that process. In talking with you and John through the process, or other people on your team with regards to leaf pickup, I think the first couple passes through the village, if I have the right numbers, you had about 15 loads a cycle. And then there was one point where all the leaves came down, and I think you had 80 loads per cycle. And I bring that up because after the first 2 passes, somebody may say, oh, they got to my house on Wednesday, after a couple of days. But when you go from 80 to 80, just sheer quantity, maybe that house that was Wednesday was picked up Thursday or Friday. So like you said, there are some expectations that need to be set. And I think looking back, I think everybody could have done better. I think we as a village could have communicated it better. So I look forward to improving upon what we've done for next year. But I want to thank you for all the hard work that you and your team have done. And I know that we're going to have a special recap meeting here shortly and look forward to the outcomes from that meeting.
Yeah, I
Mayor
would just
Tom.
like to add, I live on Pontiac Drive, and I had two of my neighbors give me compliments on the job that SBC did in picking up the leaves and how pleased they were. So, and I guess it disturbs me to learn that you were more, there was a situation where your company was more or less taken advantage of. And I think if that happens again, I would suggest that you bring that to the village's attention. That certainly is not our intention to have you do more than what you've contracted for. So please keep that in mind for the future.
And
Will
we
do.
do need to get word out to the residents on that. That was something that I was unaware of, the fly dumping. So we will be addressing that next year.
Yeah, John.
And Rita,
John,
to add to your point.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jake.
Oh, I just was going to say to Rita, John, Mayor Tom, when we get after this first year, our company commitment is to go above and beyond. And it was again a great financial burden to us, but for this first year, it was a statement to our commitment to this community. And we've talked to staff throughout the process. We said we're going to do this no matter what. Next year we've got John and Andy and I have worked through a couple of creative steps of how we're going to help notify the residents if there's maybe material we shouldn't be taking it. And we've got a good plan, I think, for next year, which will help eliminate this. So we're very positive on our outlook for next year. There are a couple of outlying it. The leaf vacuuming is a short period of time. The larger issue is at stake is at the 12 months a year we do the trash and recycling collection. And one of the things that I've seen in Indian Head Park as related to a lot of municipalities, there's an extraordinarily high level of recycling contamination. And what that is, it's not because the residents are bad. It's not because the residents don't want to recycle. But part of it's because the program that's we have, and it's also part of it's just residents have a wishful idea. I wish I could recycle this, and therefore I'm going to put it in there. Such as, I have a plastic coffee maker. I'm going to put it in my recycle container. Except I can't recycle that. The recycle contamination has put us in a situation where we see trash, just regular trash in the recycle bins. And we started to tag for that to inform the residents that, hey, you need to separate the material correctly, et cetera. And some of the complaints that the staff got and that we got was that, well, I recycle correctly. There's nothing wrong. I've given the Andy and John, it's your discretion of whether you want to show some of the photos I sent to show what we experience on a weekly basis. We've experienced extraordinary levels of contamination. Light bulbs, large lamps.
Jake, if I can interrupt.
Sure.
We're trying to get those slides you sent me, we're trying to get it on the Zoom announcement or the Zoom call right now.
Okay. Well, as you're pulling it up, I'll just give you another 30 seconds of some of the other experiences. So because of all of that, it creates a greater burden on us as the company to how to interact. And then also you might have a complaint about a bulk item on the side, et cetera. So we are very open to work with staff to increase the capacity and increase the level of service to maybe mitigate any complaints. But again, it's entirely of your discretion and what you and John think is what you want to do. And we're very flexible on our process. Financial burden to us.
I have a question.
Jake? Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
have
Go
a
ahead, Chris.
question. Is that unique to Indian Head Park, or is it something that's typical amongst refuse companies?
Well, it's unique. It's unique. All refuse companies have had experience of level of contamination since 2017, when China shut the door on the commodities of the recycling market. So we've had a constriction of what was recyclable acceptable in the recent years. But I would say, for the type of community that Indian Head Park is, it's very rare. You'll see some. I'll be honest, a bag of trash put on top of a recycle bin saying, oh, this is recycling, take it. And not to insult my colleague, Andy, but I have a phrase, there's always a cheap Andy out there who doesn't want to buy a sticker. And the cheap Andy will say, oh, I wish I could recycle this, but it's a giant plastic bag full of trash, and I just don't want to put a sticker on there.
Okay,
So
on the inverse of the garbage recycling being picked up along with the garbage in the same truck. So, I mean, it happened in my house. It was on a Saturday because there was a billing snafu that had to be straightened out. But I saw it at a neighbor's house later on a Friday, not early in the morning. So how come that happens? And I noticed, I saw it on Facebook as well, that somebody commented about the recycling being picked up along with the trash, put in the same container, same truck. So
Yeah.
how come that happens?
Yeah, so we take very seriously our commitment to recycle, and we take very seriously our environmental response to all the material we collect. When there's high levels of contamination and we identify it, we have a choice whether we tag it and say, resident, please separate A and B, or we remove the material and continue to try to work with staff to educate residents. And Andy and John can, so I don't speak incorrectly, we've done a fair bit of public communication related to what's recyclable and what's not. And as a result of a high level of contamination, there's been a couple situations where we needed to take it as trash, or else we were going to have a complaint where we didn't take it. And so it's kind of a mixed bag. We kind of have to, again, manage our expectations about what's taken, when, and why. And if folks pay $25, $30 a home, well, it's gonna disappear no matter what. We have to worry about that. But with the current program, that as it's designed, a free recycling bin, it needs to be clean, it needs to be dry, and it needs to be empty. And if it's not, we're going to tag it or we're not going to collect it.
I think the challenge might be, Jake, I know I hear a little echo, but I think what's happening through the transition is that people didn't have to think about it. And I take this with a grain of salt, but they'll say to me, because I've gotten several people that have called me about this, we didn't have to figure this out with Groot, they took it. Okay, and we don't care, we will pay the extra money, give me Groot back, because I don't want to deal with this. I have a lot of other things to deal with. I'd rather spend the extra money.
Okay.
So I think it's a difficult, it's hard because they had a process before they didn't have to think about, right? And now they have a process that, I understand why you're saying this, because you have labor associated with sorting it. Well, Groot sorted it. They sorted it. They took whatever we put on whatever container and they sorted it. They didn't put a note on about contamination. They didn't have to worry about stickers, because whatever they put next to their can, Groot would pick up, basically.
Yeah.
So that's what the expectation is difficult. Personally, we don't have a lot of garbage anymore. So there's not a lot of these things that are impacting our family. But for the people that do still have a lot of garbage, they didn't have to think about it, and now they're really having to think about it.
I don't want to speak for John, and I don't want to speak for what the administration would like to do for the village. I just need to speak for us and what we're happy to do to accommodate this, because we we get the calls, we see some emails, and we try to think through, try to be forward thinking. If the village and if the administration would like to kind of proceed to a take-all program where we have a modest increase in our price and we take everything, no matter what, there's no stickers for bulk items, there's none of this, and you don't have to worry about contamination anymore, we can accommodate that, and it would still be less than what your neighboring communities or what groups was previously charging. We have the capacity to do that. When we bid for this work, that was not what we were asked to do. So we had to accommodate the business cycle and the business structure and our pro formas of how we conduct this scope of work. So we're happy to accommodate that, and I think that it wouldn't be a difficult process to work with the administration to make that happen.
Well, so can you just give us 2 seconds on, so let's say you get the contaminated recycling and the recycling truck picks up the recycling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you bring it to your facility and it's going down a conveyor belt and you're sorting it, right? No matter
Mm-hmm.
what. So you're sorting it anyway, right?
Yeah, but it's that then we get a fee for contamination and it ends up going as trash anyways.
Okay, so the process is probably fairly similar to Groot's process, right? I mean, I would say it's somewhat like, I'm not saying exactly, but they're sorting it, you're sorting it, you have to get out the contamination. So that's the bottom line is if you have contamination, you have to spend money on it, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's just the people's perception of, I didn't have to worry about this before and now I do. I think that's the feedback I'm getting is like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I'll be honest with you. It's a logical thing that residents say, well, I have to think about this now. And then you have the issue is about the design of the program. So my recycling's free. It assumes that someone recycles well, as opposed to somebody says, well, I wish I could recycle this. Then the added benefit, I don't have to buy a sticker to pay for my trash. As opposed to if I have a recurring monthly fee, then the company can adjust, those of us that are collecting it, we can adjust for contamination on an annual basis. So it's kind of a little bit of it's more about economics than it is about the resident. And I think based upon the program design, you kind of get a little bit of you get a little math that works slightly different. I think that's the piece that maybe is underappreciated here.
All right. Thank you, Amy and Jake and Andy. I know looking back, I personally could have done a better job. I think to add on to Rita's comments, I did get a lot of compliments. I got a few complaints, and I don't think our tally toggle added up the compliments. So Andy, if we do this again, we may need a compliments category. John and Jake, I would ask that you work to come up with that price or the difference if we wanted to look at the added service level that you have mentioned. And Andy, to circle back to you, do we have any SBC Village events coming up that you could talk about?
Yeah. So the one that we just recently scheduled, and this is some months away, this is going to be on June 12th, which is a Saturday. That's going to be our annual electronics and paint recycling event. And that's going to be held at Public Works, since Acacia Drive will be under construction at the time. And at that time, Indian Head Park, the residents will be able to bring their electronics and their paint to get recycled. And that's on the 12th. And we'll continue to put out reminders as we get closer to that date as well.
We'll also have a list of what constitute electronics. Yeah. I don't know if we're taking 65-inch TVs or any of that, but all that fine detail will be coming down the road, right, Andy?
Yes, yes.
All right, any other final thoughts or comments from the board?
Real quick, and Jake, thank you for your time. And I know this is difficult, probably feel like you're getting beat up, but one of the recurring issues that I had with last week coming to me personally from residents that knew that I was on the board was the inability to get through to your phone system and not getting calls back. That they felt, okay, my garbage didn't pick up, I'm calling, nobody's answering my call, nobody's responding. They just felt like they were left out on an island. Is there a different way that they could go about getting that information to you guys? A Facebook page, something that they don't have this issue going forward?
Yes, and to be completely honest, getting through to our line is never an issue in any other week besides last week. One of the challenges we faced as an organization last week was that we had a couple staff members that were sick, and due to our concern related to the pandemic, we made sure that our staff members stayed at home, and as a result, our phone support staff was cut by half. And simultaneously, by the way, nobody was sick. Thank God, everyone's tested. Everything's wonderful now. But the other challenge was that we were onboarding another municipality. And so because of that project, because those two dynamics, the phone lines were a little bit overboard. That's an isolated one-off situation. They can always go to the residential help at SBC. It's on our website. And myself and 7 other people monitor that on a daily basis, hourly basis. So they will get direct response from one of us. And that should resolve that. I wouldn't expect the experience of last week to be a regular pattern. I would call that a one-off. And just a final thought related to this, John and Mayor Tom and board. We can and always will adapt to whatever environment faces. And so related to, I make myself available to all of you. If there's a complaint that you're getting that you need a response to, please reach out to us so that we can deal with that as something may not seem right. And we always welcome you to our facility. And if you'd like to get in a hard hat and sit in one of our trucks, we're happy to let you do that.
To follow up on Jake's comment, I did field 3 calls last Friday afternoon, and I emailed or texted Jake, and they were all taken care of by the end of business on Friday. So residents can still call the village and complain, and we will reach out privately to SBC to get it done.
All right, any other final thoughts, comments from the board? Okay, Jake, thank you again for that, and thank you for all the work on this effort. Moving along, department head reports. Justin, water.
Wrong one. I'm here. Thank you, Mayor. Had a few snow events, as you all know. We've got some salt delivered, so we're now at full capacity. Water main break events in December and January, we had 2. One was on Blackhawk Trail on the north end. That would be the old water main. And one was on Arrowhead Trail. Both were minor, and we had minor disruption. Our vehicle fleet, we had some plow truck salt issues, but they've been since resolved, and we're prepared for the next event. That includes a purchase of a small salt spreader for our tiny sidewalk plow for parks and sidewalks. Please remember, we have a plowing priority list, and cul-de-sacs, sidewalks are always the last priority. Everyone's here at work, and we're ready to work. We're currently in the planning stages, upcoming streets, roads, and sewer programs for 2021. And we're still working on water main and pump house upgrading planning. We started doing some cleaning up down on Flat Creek, dead brush along Cochise. And it looks really nice. We're going to continue to do this as needed. And then also in the area of 70th Place and Flag Creek, well, we've been talking with MWRD for months. We've got them to be coming, start removing some buckthorn along the creek. And along Roofers Road from Joliet to Wolf, private contractor has already, I believe it was probably the roofers or price took it upon themselves and clearing out all that on that private road, except for the trees that should be there. So that's still going on. It's starting to look pretty nice. Don and I are looking to obtain our pesticides license, so we can work with MWRD after they come through to treat some of that buckthorn in that area. Training at PW has included routine safety, COVID safety, snow removal and salt certification through APWA, and currently construction inspection certification is in progress, and that's also through APWA. That's all I got.
Hey, Tom, before you move on, I just want to say quickly, Justin quickly went over a salt mechanical issue with some of the equipment. I just want to say thank you. I believe what you were referring to was there was a couple of areas where salt was overdumped or came out and it piled up on the street. And we had a resident, I had a resident that reached out to me that it was an issue in front of her house. And I'm not kidding, within 15 minutes of calling Justin, I drove by and they had already taken care of it. So thank you, and to the guys to get out there and do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was just a mishap, but we got it some cleaned up. So you're welcome.
Thank you, Sean. Any other questions or comments for Justin?
As an aside, Justin was down 2 people in his department. So basically half of his staff, the staff were either away on funeral leave or out for medical reasons. So we brought in some contractors, but Justin basically made Public Works his home for a couple days. So I just want you to know that the team is there for us. So thank you, Justin.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Any other comments, questions from the board? I just want to add on to what Justin said again. The MWRD work is kind of a buckthorn trial process, right, Justin?
That's correct.
So we'll see how that works and how it maintains going forward, because we've been talking about trying to eradicate buckthorn. I want to have a brief thank you to Justin and team. Just finishing the year 2020, we had a water loss for the village at 3.5%. And that is fantastic. John, who has years in the water industry, says anything below 10% is doing very good. And recently, in the last year or so, there was a story about LaGrange, and their water loss is 25%. So I really applaud Justin and team and everybody on the job well done, because water loss is water down the drain, so to speak. And of course, we pay for each gallon. So thank you, Justin, for that. And thank you to you and the team. We have come to expect roads to be in pretty good condition when it snows. And that means that there are guys working any day, all night, weekends, holidays, whatever it is, to take care of that. So please pass on my thank you to the entire team that does that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, is that it, Justin?
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? Okay, we are on the agenda point for public comments. Anybody on the call would like to say anything? Linda, do you have any that have come in through the admin? You do? All right, let me look on the Zoom call first. I don't see anybody raising their hand or anything. Linda, do you want to make that comment?
Yes, sir. I have a couple questions from Amy Eckert in the Acacia subdivision. Her first question was, where do you propose to have cameras within the village? The second question, would the village consider a fenced dog park as as part of any park upgrade? And the third is, what needs will there be for additional landscaping along Acacia Drive? We were under the impression that the landscaping was already a part of the project. And then she had also sent in a comment that she wanted to say thanks for clearing the sidewalks in Black Hawk Park because it made it much safer for walkers.
Okay, the discussion of any comment on cameras would be way premature. We're just now starting to look at it again. So that is something that we will involve the board and community in. So stand by for that. Landscaping on Acacia Drive. I think she was talking about my comment. If somebody wanted additional landscaping or shrubbery along Acacia Drive, that's over and above the state project. So whatever happens will be an add-on.
Well, and I think
it
wasn't
was
it a
also
goal?
one of the, yeah, Amy, I got it. It was one of the potential goals. And so again, in talking about Acacia, yes, we do have landscaping in the budget, but kind of piggybacking off of the Wolf Road and the Timber Trails fencing, one of the potential goals is to make Acacia look as good as we can. And that may mean more rocks or the large stones or more bushes or more trees than we have. And so it's just, again, a potential goal, a potential thought. So we really don't have a lot of details, Amy, but thank you for your question. And John, I think there was one more.
And the dog park one, please submit it to the village, or I actually have a note on that. We can add it to our goals for discussion.
Linda, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, last chance looking at Zoom. I don't see anybody. Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to go to closed session for the purpose of discussion of personnel, per 5 ILCS 122C1.
And just
I'll
for
second.
clarification, Trustee Wittenberg, that motion is to adjourn the regular meeting and go into closed session for that purpose with no intention to return, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And I'll
Thank you,
second.
Council.
Thank you, Amy and Sean. Clerk Allison, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wittenberg,
Aye.
Trustee Kennedy,
Aye.
Trustee O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Trustee Metz,
Aye.
Trustee Farrell Mayor,
Aye.
and Trustee Conboy.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Meeting is adjourned at 9:15. We'll take a 2-minute break and we'll be back in a moment.